So Ginny Rometty once said, growth and comfort do not coexist. And I believe that all sun and no rain only makes a desert. My name is Zilia, and I'm the co-founder of a travel movement named Anywhere. Anywhere sends you on personalized surprise trips, and you discover your destination only at the airport. Since I was a child, I have been very lucky to travel around the world with my family. Went to Disneyland, went to Australia, went to places I didn't even know because I was so young. But then I realized that, hey, I really hated traveling. And when I was 12, I told my parents I want to stop going on these family trips. We were just rushing to places, ticking off checklists, eating that food, buying that souvenir. What's the point of all of it? We knew everything we wanted to do, even before we left the house. But when I grew older, I realized it wasn't traveling that I hated, but the way we traveled. So after finishing my diploma a few years ago, all my friends were planning amazing grad trips, eating their way around Japan, island hopping in Indonesia. But I decided, hey, screw it. After 3 years of suffering in school, I did what nobody in my class thought. I bought a ticket, went to backpack India alone, solo for a couple of weeks. It was then I discovered couch surfing, so I slept on strangers' couches the whole time. And this was my view on my first day in Delhi. And I also ended up taking an overnight train from Delhi to Darjeeling, sleeping in a third-class cabin. And it was so amazing, I lost one side of my slipper on the train, and the entire carriage activated to help me look for that side of the slipper. And it was just so funny. I also did a hike from India to Nepal. It was my first hike as a city girl, not knowing what to expect. I turned up in jeans and sneakers. My host had to lend me his clothes because he knew that I would not have made it. And after the most uncomfortable 2 weeks of my life, having diarrhea, sleeping on couches, not knowing where I was going, I was hooked. So I came back to Singapore, had to do my uni, had a nice job at a luxury hospitality hotel. And it was just what people call a nice life. Traveled for free, stayed in the hotels, had a nice salary, bought everything I wanted. But then I realized that there must be something more. And after these 3 years, I want that something more. Life was always comfortable and always predictable. So I quit my job, did the most uncomfortable and most unpredictable thing, bought a one-way ticket to the furthest place I could afford, ended up somewhere in Scandinavia, and only planned where I was staying for the first 3 nights. And that began my 6-month journey around Europe. Just going on the cheapest bus, cheapest train ticket I could, following where locals told me to go. And I didn't even knew those places existed before I was there. So I ended up in the Arctic Circle, in the wooden cabin, all alone by myself. I did not even know I was that far till I looked at a map. So in this 1 month, I learned so much about myself under the midnight sun hiking. That was where I had nothing to do. I applied for my master's in NUS, drove a car around. I didn't have a license. And we ended up just going to the sauna, visiting reindeers, making so many new friends, and cook for people in the village. Another experience of my trip. So I was in the hostel in Estonia all alone. And being this shy Singaporean girl, I was just in my shell. And these people, that guy Rick, he came to ask me if I would like to explore the city with them. And I was so shy and alone, I said no. And he asked, and on the third time, I said yes. And I was so glad I did. We became lifelong friends, traveled around 3 countries together. And this is us in Amsterdam at the Pride Parade with some other friends from Hungary. And this is at a music festival in a Ukraine forest. I ended up being all alone. I realized I had no cash, no phone connection, did not understand the language. And it was the kindness of the locals there that adopted me, took me to their campsite. And then I realized it was my birthday. And people I barely met a few minutes ago celebrated it with me. And after this trip, I realized that traveling is all about forging meaningful connections and discovering worlds, discovering the world within you, the world you have with people around you, and the world we all live in. And that, to me, is what travel is all about. And this journey is personal, and nobody can take that away from you. So after my trip, I came back and did another uncomfortable thing, ditched the corporate life, worked for a startup, and that's where I met my co-founder of Anywhere, Felix. We were both working for Rocket Internet. And I told him, hey, why not just send people on holidays whereby they don't know where they're going? He thought for a while, and he said, hey, that might actually work. And from there, Anywhere was born. So we were just building a website, sitting on the ground in a shopping mall, using free Wi-Fi. And one day, a booking came in. So I asked him, do you make a test booking? He was like, no, did you? I was like, no. So, oh shit, we had our first customer. We did not know what to do. And imagine being our first customer, packing your bags, heading to the airport, opening an envelope. Next thing you know, you're on a plane to somewhere you would never have gone. And that was her experience. And how uncomfortable is that? But then again, how exciting is that? So this is the package that our travelers receive. It's the Anywhere Mail. It contains a travel log, which is a guidebook telling you crucial information like flights, directions, some cash to make sure you don't die, and you're off on your trip alone. No itinerary, just up to you to explore and venture. So 2 years and a couple thousand travelers later, here's what some of them say. This is Arif. So on his usual trips, he said his friends plan it, he goes shopping, take photos for Instagram, and this time, he just went all out. He took a local bus. He did not even know how to read the numbers. And there was a guy on the bus who was so excited to find out he's from Singapore. He said, hey, I have a brother working in Singapore. He called his brother, make a long-distance call just to let Arif talk to him. And he also went hiking alone, conquered a mountain. And after that, he said this trip was the greatest achievement of his life. We also have Lena, who I just met last week. We sent her somewhere, she said, was on her no-go list. And after that, she said, I wonder why was this even on my no-go list? It was amazing. So for her, the first few days of her trip, she was so afraid in the hotel room alone. And she thought, hey, since I'm here, why not make the best of it? And she ended up, scaling waterfalls, going to national parks, meeting new friends, and just going to night markets together. And she said that she felt so empowered and realized she's more capable than she thought. She needed a break from a hectic work life, and she got so much more than that. We also have Charlene. She went on her second Anywhere trip, and she asked her mom along. And actually, she said that if her mom was going to be brave, she wants to be brave with her. But her mom ended up being more brave and more spontaneous than her. Charlene was the one who wanted to pin everything on Google Maps. Hey, we should see this, eat this best food. But her mom took her hand and said, hey, why not we just go with the flow? And when we interviewed her, I asked, what's the best moment of your trip? And she was actually tearing, she said, because she did not get to spend much time with her mom. But every night on this trip, they just took it easy. Her mom held her hand when they slept. She's in her 30s. Yeah, and her mom held her hand, and they just had such a good time bonding and discovering things together. And all these was our idea, and the experiences of our travelers make it just so rewarding for us. And all these would not have happened if we just allowed ourselves to be comfortable. So with that, I would like to encourage all of you to take your own journey to discover your own worlds. And you never know what you might find. To be uncomfortable, and the rest will follow. Thank you.
So we're going to invite my next speaker too, who's going to give another talk as well. Come along now. Yeah, come along now. Come on, come on. Come on. So won't you come along? Together we're stronger. Together we're stronger, believe me. So baby, come along. Baby, come along. Relax, turn up your phone, and I will make you feel at home. So baby, come along. Come on. Why won't you come along?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tu, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Christina's from Vietnam. Has anyone here been to Vietnam? Using Airbnb in Vietnam? Okay, look me up, okay? Tu Nguyen, Airbnb, Vietnam, Christina, and you'll find our listings. We provide amazing local experiences for travelers from all over the world. As you saw from the video, you didn't see any accommodation, but in order for you to have that kind of experience, you have to have accommodation, you have to have transportation, and then you book the activity, and then you have to be able to eat local food. those are all the things that are local, provided by people, local communities. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about today, how local tourism development can empower local communities and eventually change the way we think about how we work, how we live, and how we travel. About 4 years ago, I started Christina with 2 listings on Airbnb. And it was simply because I thought it would be a great idea to have a place where I can have guests coming in and out. They'll pay for the rent, and I'll just be able to live for free and maybe launch my own investment fund. My background was in finance. I had no idea what hospitality, travel, any of these things were, except for experiencing them myself. I never worked in the industry, but from that 2 listings on Airbnb, that's partly why I'm kind of rocking Airbnb today, because I wouldn't be here without a platform like Airbnb. I even wear Airbnb socks. So from that 2 listings on Airbnb, we've now had accommodations across 6 different cities throughout Vietnam. We're the #1 ranked accommodation business on TripAdvisor. We're the #1 ranked tour operator on TripAdvisor. And we're now at 5 cafes and 1 restaurant and growing very fast. Our team is now at 395 people across the country with another 150 freelance tour guides. And not only have we started to develop these places to stay, things to do, and food to eat, we've also built an architecture company, a video production, a very successful video production company, actually, a print magazine. Where's the print? Organic farming company, a hospitality training company, because nobody out there is training the stuff that we're doing. So we have to build our own training. We have to do our own sourcing, because over the next 12 months, we're going to be sourcing between owners and for us about $50 million worth of stuff that you need for the homes, for the businesses. So we have to do all of these things. But also from day one, we knew that we had to be a technology company if we really want to think about the long term. So we built tools for our hosts, which is the technology for operators. So that's like PMS, customer relationship management, HRM. So all the things that you need to operate a business, a hospitality business. We couldn't afford Oracle's, Opera's, or any of these other systems out there. So we built them ourselves. And actually, it worked out quite well, because nobody out there actually had a system that allow you to manage Airbnb as effectively, as efficiently as what we have ended up building. And from there, we built tools for travelers. We have itinerary for travelers so that they can plan, customize their trip. And we linked all of that with a button called Uber. And then they exited the market. And so we said, are we going to put in Grab? Or we're going to think of a better solution? And so we decided to build a better solution. So we're getting into transportation as well. So those are basically all the areas where travelers are spending their money, right? So I'm here to talk about how social entrepreneurship is going to transform the way we work. But I don't know, I'm not here to lecture. I'm only sharing the story of how Christina has been able to do it. And hopefully you can glean from that. And then eventually, this is where we want to get to. An ecosystem that will empower many, many, many small businesses to kind of simply plug in, doing what they love, having legal, accounting, all sort of stuff that are kind of boring. Any lawyers here? So that they can focus on doing the things that they love. So that's the ecosystem that we're trying to build. So that's what they see in terms of our brand. Stay at Christina's, experience one trip, taste joy. We're a tech company. We build a lot of stuff. And one of the biggest things that we found was that there's a huge challenge as we continue to grow. So we look at ways that we can share information, that we can communicate better. So this is how we're integrating. Basically, it's our PMS. It's the core system to managing all the rooms, but it communicates with all of our messaging systems. So we work closely with Facebook Workplace in order to integrate the communication channels so that our team can operate more efficiently. We're building out our own messaging systems to integrate Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia, all into one so that our team would not miss a message from a guest. That's how we're able to get all the 5-star reviews. And then, of course, the itinerary. Before, I would actually sit down with our guests and spend about 30 to 40 minutes talking to them about all the different recommendations that they can do while they're visiting Ho Chi Minh City. But now, our host can just send out that link and then take another 5 minutes when the guests arrive and confirming and saying, yes, you definitely should go to that restaurant. And they already know everything. So that's the itinerary that we plan out for the guests. And so we just launched this about last month. This is our transportation solution, essentially providing airport transfer at the beginning and then eventually getting into shuttle services for travelers in different hubs that we have throughout Vietnam. So we call it MOVE. And we've done quite well. As I mentioned, we're ranked #1 on TripAdvisor's. We've been Superhost on Airbnb for a very long time now. And the big thing here, whenever guests mention, if you go and read any of our reviews online, it's always about the people. And oftentimes, they would mention our host name, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about our team. Our team is very young. More than half of the team is under 25. Most of them graduated from university without any work experience ever. And we actually think that's a huge advantage in hospitality. As I think Carolyn was talking about it earlier, about that experience, that bringing in people with different perspective that don't have that sort of yes sir, yes ma'am, like very cookie cutter 5-star hotel experience. We bring in authenticity, the genuine hospitality of someone that just comes in and says, hey, cool, you come in to stay? Okay. What are you going to do? So it's very simple, casual, genuine hospitality. We're able to get that, and it's a huge advantage for us. But we're also empowering these people to be able to get the perspective from the travelers. The education is happening as they are providing experiences to our guests. The 150 freelance tour guides, they actually would work for free just being able to speak English with our guests, right? So those are the ways that we think about empowering people. And this is very important. When we started building the company, we asked ourselves, what kind of company do we want to become? Is it another big corporations where people work and they have their bosses and they always complain about their bosses? So I don't want to have anybody complain about me. So I said, we're not going to have any manager in the company. 0 manager. 395 people, 150 freelancers, no managers. So how did we do it? Whoever makes sense has the most authority in the company. So this sets the stage for figuring out how can we empower everybody, not just the senior leadership, not just the very top performer, but across the board, across the whole company, whoever makes sense has the most authority in the company. So what this does is it allows the people with the best ideas to have the biggest voice. And we have very, very clear core values. Just the other day, for example, one of our guests, it's kind of crazy, old Vietnam War veteran guy. He came back and he sent us a message saying he was pissed at some visa provider, and he said, somebody's gonna go to jail if something goes wrong with my check-in. And that's crazy, right? So I told our team, I don't think we should be hosting this guy. And our host sent me a message in the group saying, actually, as a team, we've assessed the situation. He's an old guy coming to Vietnam for the first time. We know it's risky. We're going to have male hosts to greet him and take care of him. But we don't think that we should leave him to himself in a new country when he first arrived. They overrode my decision, my recommendation, not decision. Because the core value is very clear to them. They want to be compassionate. They want to do things that make sense for the business. And they have that voice, right? So they made sense when they made that argument, and I have to agree. So this is very important to us. And that's what it means when we say love solves everything. But more importantly, it's our belief. We believe in empowering people to do what they love, working for themselves, not for other people. All of our team, because of these core values, what we believe in, and the things that they're doing, they're working for themselves, not for others. And I think that's very important, and I'll dive into it a little bit more soon. This is our goal, to become the #1 entrepreneur hub for Vietnam as we grow. This is going to happen maybe late 2019. We're going to be growing, doing what we're doing in Vietnam. We've been able to empower local Vietnamese, local communities. And so from Vietnam, we're already having people reaching out to us for partnerships in Bangkok, Sri Lanka, Taipei, even hopefully Tokyo. So we're taking this thing that we're doing here in Vietnam, empowering people, and making it global. Why? So we ask this question at almost every meeting. Why are we meeting? Why are we doing this? Why are we here? And it's because we're always asking ourselves, what is our purpose in doing something? And so it always go back to the things that you love, the things that you enjoy doing, the things that are good for society. And then also you get paid for it to be sustainable. You guys recognize this guy? So he said here, nothing is more important than independence and freedom. And this actually inspired me to move back to Vietnam. I first started knowing about his story back in 2005 when I was working for UBS Investment Bank in New York. So he inspired me to go back to Vietnam, and that has been an integral part of our culture, how we build the company for people to be independent and free. The only way to do great work is to love what you do. And loving what you do is extremely important to be successful because it no longer becomes work. I wake up every day looking forward to figuring things out, recruiting the new team members that can help us to build our products. And then, of course, always at Christina, we think about how we impact local communities. We believe in empowering people to do what they love, working for themselves. Most of the multinationals that comes into Vietnam, I would say, or to any country, the business model is to get low wages because that's attractive. And even the hotels, Hilton and Marriott and all of these guys, they bring in a expat GM. Some of them even have policies that a local cannot be a GM, an official policy, so that they can have everybody work at a minimum or close to minimum wage. And most of that profit, guess where it's going? Not in the local communities. why am I standing up here wearing an Airbnb sweater? It's because Airbnb has changed that completely, empowering a local homestay to reach out to millions of potential travelers across the globe so that they can work for themselves. And all of that money, all of that economic will go back into the local community. And that is how we can develop sustainable tourism. Not with the big resorts, not with the big corporations. And when they become owners, they get to do what they love. And as a result, we'll also make the world a better place. So at Christina, we look to people that inspire us. Steve Jobs made the computer personal. Every one of us has a phone, our iPhones today. Airbnb helps people belong anywhere in the world. So we see ourselves. We look at ourselves and the people that came ahead of us, and we said, we want to transform the way people work, travel, and live. So if you're able to work for yourself and enjoy what you do, your whole life is going to be transformed. The way you live will be transformed. Thank you.
So now we come to the last part of our short session. I want to invite Lee Barnes, who's the Chief Purpose Officer of Intrepid Travel. He probably has the coolest job title in all of travel, Chief Purpose Officer, which I'm going to ask what that actually means. So thank you for coming. Here's the microphone for you. So fascinating talks before this.
Yep.
Small companies. If you wanted, you could buy all of them.
Oh, yeah, maybe we'll have a look at it. We'll see. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. So explain Intrepid Travel, what the company is for those of people who don't know what Intrepid Travel is, and then explain what a Chief Purpose Officer does.
Well, I'll start with the Chief Purpose Officer. A large part of my job is just explaining my job. So I'd say probably so far 25% of my job has been WTF, what a Chief Purpose Officer does. But realistically, I suppose I'll get back to the actual question. Intrepid Travel is the world's largest adventure travel company. So we take about 350,000 travellers away each year. Our core focus is on sustainable, experience-rich travel. So that means local leaders, local transport, local accommodation, and really getting under the skin of a destination. Our corporate focus is having a purpose beyond profit. So we fundamentally believe that doing the right thing drives profit, and then having a profit enables us to do more cool stuff, and that's self-fulfilling legacy that takes place. We go to almost 3,000, or we have almost 3,000 different itineraries and travel to 120 different countries. So you can do everything with us from climbing to Everest Base Camp, food tour in Italy, sailing Cuba. So a wide range of different trips all over the world. So what does my job do? I'll get back to the serious part of that and stop the joking with it. There's probably 5 key things that role covers. I ensure that we create the best travel experiences, so sustainable products that help empower communities. We believe travel is a force for good, so advocacy is incredibly important to Intrepid Travel. So really big focus on communications, so things like we've done and taken a stance on banning elephant riding, that big advocacy leading piece to drive positive change. Mm-hmm. Really focusing on creating better places to live and visit, and I think that's a fundamental important thing for a travel company, is to focus on creating great places to live and visit, and we're doing that through things like community-based tourism, where we work with the local community to create jobs and great travel experiences. And then internally, a large part of my job is to ensure that our people become better every single day. So creating HR programs to empower our people, ensure that all of our staff have purpose so they can continue to grow. And then underlying all of that, by 2020, 1% of all revenues that the Intrepid Group creates will go straight back into purpose initiatives. So a large part of my job is ensuring where that money goes, how we use it, how we ensure...
You said 20% or so?
Oh, by 2020, 1%. So 1% of all of our revenue by 2020 will go into...
Okay, 2020, okay.
By the year 2020.
I thought you said 20%.
I'd probably get killed by my boss. Daryl, our founder, would have my head on a plate if I committed 20% of our revenue. But yeah, 1% of our revenue. So that's all things like community-based tourism projects, carbon offsetting all of our trips, gender programs, gender equality programs that we put in place.
So you recently converted to a B Corp. So B Corp, explain what B Corp is. It's a relatively new thing. As a very large company, it took you, I think, about 3 years to go through that journey, is to convert to a B Corp. And why did you think that was necessary?
Yeah, so a bit of background. B Corp is pretty much what fair trade is to products. B Corp is to organisations. So it ensures that you have correct governance, that you look after your workers, that you have a great impact in the community, you do everything right environmentally. So it's sort of a framework and a rubber stamp to say this company adheres to these values and does the right thing. And organisations that you would know would be Patagonia, Ben & Jerry's are some of the largest B Corps in the world. We've now become the world's largest travel B Corp, and I think it was a hell of a lot of work. I don't think our founders would have signed up to it if they knew the amount of work that went into it. We had to get almost 20 of our offices accredited globally. Wow. And that's going through every facet of your organisation, how you pay your staff, how your benefits are, how you do your recycling in the office. I've never been asked a question about where our batteries go. I had to ensure that our batteries in the office go to the right place. So every facet, all the way through. And the reason we did it was really to provide an actual framework and to say that we do the right thing. Because I think a lot of, in the travel industry, and you've definitely seen it and written about it, there's a lot of greenwashing that takes place where organisations say they do the right thing. We really wanted to back that up, and we really wanted to have a third-party independent organisation say and back us up that we're doing the right thing. But then also, it's a framework, and I think one of the really cool things that we didn't realise the power for is that it's a framework for us to get better. So we've learned a lot about our supply chain. You know, we had too many contracts with male owners in the Middle East. So since that moment, we've now been able to go renegotiate. So a lot of the homestays in Egypt were actually with the men who had nothing to do with the business. It was just the cultural component. So we went back in Egypt and renegotiated so that the actual providers of the product we had the contract with. So we were able to empower women. So it gave us it really shone a lens on the things we weren't doing well and where we needed to get better. So that framework was incredibly important, and it's really highlighted what we need to do to get better going forward.
So, why do you think purpose, which is your title, but also the purpose of the company, why does purpose-led company work so well in travel?
Yeah, it's something I've thought about a lot. I think it's because travel is inherently human. You know, without people, there is no product. People travel, you meet other people, you connect. So it's a very human thing to care about others, to have that purpose. And I think it's very tangible. So, you know, without an environment, we don't have a travel product. Without wildlife, we don't get to go see stuff. So it's very tangible. We can all see the role from a travel perspective that there's gender inequality happening. You see that when you travel. You know, you see that there's other people struggling. So I think it's because it's a very human product. You connect, you learn. So yeah, I think that human component and how tangible it is that you see benefits take place.
And so you talked about gender inequality, and you have, as a company, been working on increasing the diversity of your tour guides, for instance, women in India or Egypt and other places as well. So talk about that, why that was necessary, how are travelers reacting to it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting case study we had as an organisation. Obviously, we've always led with our purpose, but when we did a review of our actual leaders, so those people that are actually out leading the trips, the tour guides, in certain countries, we had no female leaders. But if you think about our product, about 60% of our travellers are female, about 60% of our overall staff are female, but we only had probably 10% of our guides being female, and that didn't sit right with us. We definitely identified that we weren't doing what we should be doing there. So, you know, in India and Morocco specifically, under 30% of the workforce is female. So we really wanted to stand up and make a change and really empower women to become tour leaders. So we thought it would be pretty easy to start off with. We'll put an ad up and we'll get more female leaders to come through. Unfortunately, wasn't the case, Rafat. We had to go back to how we're actually recruiting people. We had to go to universities, we had to go to salons, we had to go to theatres, we had to go back to where the people were. We had to speak to them, encourage them, and then we also had to go to the families. We did a lot of time talking to the families to try and break down that barrier to say this was a professional job. Because in a lot of these places, if women are travelling with foreigners, if they're travelling away from home, it's not seen as very reputable. You know, it's seen as that they may be doing something untoward and not a professional career change. So we had to do a lot of work with the families to try and get them to believe that this is a professional career for them. Since that time, in India, we've gone from 2 female leaders to 22. In Morocco, we've gone from 0 to 10. We actually had to do work with the Moroccan government to enable them to release the permits. So in Morocco, if you want to be a leader, you have to have a government-issued permit. And they weren't releasing those permits to females. So we actually, Zena, our GM, as a female as well in Morocco, had to go in and work with the government to enable those permits to be available. So, yeah, it's been really interesting. We've had to work with government, we've had to work with the families, and we're seeing really positive change. So one of the interesting things, the feedback score for our female tour guides is actually higher than our males. So we're seeing the actual product improve because of having a more diverse workforce. And that's been really cool.
And so, in an age where you would assume that package travel is dead, it looks like Intrepid is thriving. I mean, your numbers are relatively known. As part of the B Corp, you have to release your top line revenue numbers, even though you're a private company.
Yeah. So, and we do, transparency is very important for us as an organisation. So we've recently relaunched our first integrated report. So complete transparency of all of our revenue numbers, our costing, everything's there that you can go through. Complete transparency around all of our sustainability practices, our supply chain, how we manage our people. So yeah, transparency has been incredibly important for us, and that part with being B Corp. But I think it's one of the reasons people like us. You know, we are authentic. And I think
people choosing, do you see evidence people choosing purpose-led companies while they travel, or is it still sort of implicit versus explicit?
I'd say implicit. You know, we know that it's not the key driver for the first time they book with us, but we know it drives massive repeat business. Yep. So the reason they go with us the first time, to be brutally honest, is price, availability, and itinerary. But when they go that first time, they come back because they like what we stand for. And we see that really strong repeat come through because of the stances we take on topics, the authentic travel experiences, and how transparent we are as an organisation.
So I think you mentioned about stopping elephant tours in Southeast Asia. Obviously, unfortunately, the most iconic part of what people would assume would know when you're coming to Southeast Asia. Explain what that decision was.
So we're becoming increasingly more uncomfortable with our role in elephant tourism. Around 2012, it was something we were noticing that so many of our customers were going on our trips to ride elephants. And we were sort of starting to realise, because of the volume, we were seeing this wasn't probably the best practice. So we commissioned research with WWF, and we went and looked at the whole process, the whole supply chain of elephant riding. And what we found is there's no humane, sustainable, good any way to tame a wild elephant. There's no way to do it that is horrendously cruel and is in any way morally correct. So after that research, we decided as a leadership team that we were going to ban elephant rides. But we had a big commercial problem there. About 40% of our product at that time, 40% of our travellers were going to Southeast Asia. Wow. So huge commercial risk. And to be honest, when we did all the surveys, the number one experience why travellers were going to Southeast Asia was to ride elephants. To get that picture, it was quite, one of the weird cultural things. It was one of the most used Tinder profiles was people riding elephants, which was very strange. So we knew that there was an appetite for it, but it was wrong. We didn't feel right about it. So we took the stance in 2014, but we didn't just ban it. We weren't just cool enough to say, well, don't do that. We had to educate. We had to tell our customers why. And what we found is our customers were, once they understood, they didn't want to ride elephant. They didn't want to be cruel. They didn't want to contribute to it. And what we found is that once other tour operators knew, once other companies knew the damage it was doing, they didn't want to offer it as well. So since that time, our traveller numbers to Southeast Asia have been up 35%. We've seen 150 other tour operators ban elephant rides. TripAdvisor no longer offers them. So yeah, we've seen our customers resonate with them because they knew we were doing the right thing. We had to educate. We couldn't just make the ban. So we've seen that occur, and we've seen other organisers drive positive change. So that's where we see that force for good really important on taking that advocacy leadership piece as well.
So that's one example. When you are making these choices, in many ways, these are political choices in the sense that you're taking a stance and you're deciding not to do it. There's a certain segment of travelers that would not react to it, that would think that seems too progressive or too politically correct. How do you sort of overcome that?
Yeah, if you saw our Facebook feed, you'd see some of those people quite aggressively disagreeing with us. How do we reconcile with it? We lean into it. I think, we believe that we definitely have a role as travel as a force for good. That advocacy piece is incredibly important and we need to take leadership. I think there's two big issues that we've really taken a stance with over the last 5 years. One was the Trump travel ban. Yep,
Right.
we went very aggressive and put out
What was
communications.
your stance for it?
Definitely not. No, very, very against it. We stand, as a travel company for open borders. We are a very diverse company and operating in 30 different countries. We believe that open borders are incredibly important to that. Immigration's important. Having that diversity is incredibly important. So we put out our stance on it. We wrote blog articles. We spoke to the media about it. And we got backlash. Yep, we definitely lost customers for it. But we gained...
These are customers that you lost from US?
Yeah, I think for the US and globally, obviously we were told to stick out of politics. We had a lot of people come out and say, what's your place? Why are you doing this? And we definitely we had customers that said they're no longer going to travel with us. What we saw since that day out of the USA is growth to the Middle East, to those countries, is up over 50%.
Say that again. So growth from...
So growth from the USA to countries that we travel to that were listed in the ban and surrounding countries. So Middle East, generally countries from that region.
Wow.
We've seen growth of over 50%. More Americans wanted to go to Iran off the back of that than ever before. We've seen growth in Egypt, Turkey, Morocco, all in that Middle East region that's just grown exponentially. Turkey, I think, is up almost over 100% since that out of the USA.
Yeah,
So,
Turkey, which had a very bad few years in the middle, seems to have come back to a large extent.
yeah, and specifically, my previous role was the managing director for our Americas business. Selling the Middle East was incredibly tough. It was never a growth region. We saw incredible growth out of Europe, Latin America, but literally from that day, we saw tourism to the US decrease, and we saw tourism to those countries out of the USA increase.
So Trump is great for travel?
Depends which day of the week you talk to me. I think...
Yeah.
yeah, look, on the other hand, Cuba's plummeted. We've really struggled in Cuba, since some of the rhetoric.
Cuba has...
Our sales to Cuba have dropped dramatically.
Yeah, that's a pity, right?
Yeah, because it was one of our fastest growing regions. It was really, our product works great in Cuba because it's local home states. And we're having some really positive change. We're starting to do community-based tour. We'll actually start to do some cool stuff there because we're getting the volume that we need to create some positive change. And yeah, since a lot of the rhetoric about 18 months ago has come out around Cuba, we've seen, tourism to that destination really, really slow down.
So in terms of package travel and anything, I started asking the question and then went off track a little bit. The resilience of package travel seems to be there, meaning who's company who's trying to create sort of a new type of company where you put together your own experiences versus a company like yours that has packaged. One, why is the resilience? Two, how has it changed?
That's a really tough question, Rafa. I have to get some thinking music while I think of it.
No, meaning so for instance, package travel, you would assume in an age of internet would be gone.
Yeah, I think a couple of reasons. Safety. Yep, I think one of the reasons people travel with Intrepid Travels is safety. We're seeing massive growth out of the USA, and I think that's a key driver.
You said, I think last week, it actually happens to be that you were in an office in New York 2 weeks ago. You mentioned something about how single travel within the group is huge, increasing.
Yeah, solo travel is booming, and we're seeing that the solo lifestyle is growing rapidly. The use of Uber, Airbnb. Toronto, for the first time 6 months ago, Toronto, a large city in Canada, has more single dwellings than any other type of dwelling, and our customers now 50% of Intrepid travelers are solo travelers.
And is the profile changing? Is it just young? Is it older people?
No, it's everyone from 18 to 80-year-olds. And I think it's become around is that people, because of the internet, because of the sharing economy, because of the way lifestyle's moving, they want to see the world. They're not waiting for their partner, their friends. They're going out, they're getting rid of the excuses and just going. And they're seeing travel as a great way to broaden their horizons. So, yeah, that solo sector is growing. So that safety piece, having the group.
Stigma for solo is gone in general.
Yeah, I think, and stigma of solo in so many of our life situations now has totally changed. I think that stigma was probably 20 years ago evident in a whole facet of different life outcomes, and that's definitely been removed. And I think, people wear it as a badge of honour. I went there, did this myself. People quite like it because you get to do exactly what you want. You don't have to deal with any of your friends' choices or your partners. You get to do exactly what you want to experience. So, yeah, the solo piece is continuing to grow. So I think that safety piece is really, really growing. I think that people, even in the age of the internet, they want that authentic local travel experience. You've got a local leader on the trip that gives you that gateway to those experiences. So I think that is continuing to grow. Post-experience economy, the experience economy is happening now more than ever before, and they want that experience. So that leader helps you get it. And there's some places too, where we're seeing growth that the product's better on a small group. If you want to go see gorillas in Rwanda, you want to trek Patagonia, you want to do some of these, more not exclusive, more difficult experiences, it's better in a group. You provide safety, expertise, ease of permits, all that sort of stuff. You're going to be able to get a better price, better experience for some of those.
And you were mentioning when we were in office about how it's all moving to small groups. Like, what does small group mean?
Yeah, so the way we categorise it, small group is 10 to 15 people using local transport and locally owned and run accommodation. So we're seeing the itinerary sector or the group sector move heavily in towards us. So, for the last 10 years, it would have been your big bus organisations that were ruling the package industry. We're seeing that change. They've had a tough couple of years. We know that a lot of the big bus touring companies haven't been seeing the growth that they have in the last couple of years, and they're shrinking their products. They're leaning into what we're doing. They're focusing on experiences. They're focusing on that 10 to 15 bracket so you can have a more immersive experience. So we're seeing the sector come aggressively towards us, that focus on experience, small group and local.
And then obviously a big part of the fastest growing part of your business is urban adventures, which is tours and activities. Tours and activities is certainly the hottest sector in travel in terms of investment going, every part of the world.
Yeah, crazy.
And so what's driving it? Like, why is there so much activity in the tours and activities space?
It's the most sexy part of the investment travel portfolio at the moment. Everyone wants to have a tour and activities business, whether it's a OTA or actual,
Airbnb or TripAdvisor.
Everyone. Everyone's just, it seems. I think the sheer volume, there's just so much. You can really, really get your numbers up. Like, there's just so much activities. Someone could do 3 activities in one day. Mm-hmm. There's not many other travel products where you're able to have that repeat
Except for
use.
eating.
Well, yeah, and I do a lot of that, so probably 6 times a day for me, Rafa. But I think that tour, it's that frequency. A lot of travel products aren't frequent, and I think that frequency is happening. I think, as I touched on before, that experience economy is absolutely booming, and people don't want to miss out. They don't want to have a shit experience. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why the tour and activities sector is absolutely booming, because that FOMO, the Instagram age, people do not want to have a bad day on their trip.
And then in terms of tours and activities, food is a huge part of these experiences. One of the fastest growing part of tours and activities are food tours.
Yeah, and we're seeing that even on our longer standard itineraries. Food is one of our fastest growing sectors. People travel to eat, and they travel to Instagram what they eat. The food component.
Are there any tours you ban Instagram on?
We did launch a digital detox tour for a period where we banned phones. The only problem is when people got on the trip, they didn't think we were serious, and they actually wanted to keep their phones. So we did try and ban it from a period. But yeah, food's such a driver. I think it's why people travel, to experience it. It's so tangible. You can have 3 meals a day. And I think as we've seen the explosion of beer, wine, that artisanal component, people don't want to have a bad day. They don't want to have a bad beer. They don't want to have a bad meal.
So let's close with this question. What is travel industry's responsibility for climate change? You are obviously a big part of your purpose is to potentially travel in a responsible way such that it doesn't affect the climate, environment, etc. What do you think is travel industry's responsibility?
I think it's one of our biggest responsibilities. I think it's all businesses' biggest responsibilities right now. Everything we've seen, a lot of the UN report that came out last week. I don't think any one of us, Intrepid included, are doing enough. I think the travel industry has a massive, massive, massive role to play on sustainability and climate change. We're struggling with it too. We carbon offset all of our trips. And we do that. We buy credits. I think we spent $2 million on renewable energy projects over the last 5 to 8 years. But to go on our trips, you still have to fly.
Right.
And we are cognizant that we're growing quite aggressively at the moment. We're contributing. How are we reconciling that? What the hell are we going to do? Because to go on our trips, you have to get on a jet. And that contributes massively to the carbon emissions. Right. And we're uncomfortable with it. So we're really having a hard look at ourselves right now to be like, what are we going to do? And I think travel has such an important role to play in climate change, because if we don't have an environment, we don't have a travel industry.
Right.
We're seeing the Great Barrier Reef, we're seeing Machu Picchu, we're seeing all these amazing landscapes suffer.
It's incredible what's happening with Great Barrier Reef and the indecision that's still there.
Yeah. And look, this is part of our frustration and why we've been talking out against a lot of politics. It's just absolute inaction. And, in my lifetime, being an Australian, one of our biggest icons could be gone. And that's mind-blowing. And it does get me a little bit frustrated, and something personally I'm quite passionate about. But I think the travel industry has a very, very big role to play. I don't think we're doing enough or understand how much damage we're doing. And I think we all need to really step up, start to look at how we reduce what we're doing, start to look at our carbon offsets, start to look at our landscape management. We really all need to step up and start to put a hand up and do some stuff around climate change.
All right. Well, thank you, Lee. That was very good. Appreciate it.